Alright, Panther fans, so in this video I am going to go over just about the most talked about subject from Panther fans right now, other than the Stanley Cup, of course, is how are we going to deal with our free agents and everything that we've got going on pretty much immediately after the season is over. Just like last year, we're not going to have a lot of time in between the end of the Stanley Cup Finals and the free agency period, which is a good problem to have. So obviously everybody knows Bennett, Ekblad are the two free agents that Panthers have in addition to Marchand, right? So I'm going to go over a few of the possible lineups for next year, and I'm going to go over the numbers in terms of what probably will happen, what might happen, and the wishful thinking part as well. So first lineup I'm going to put up here, this would be the easiest lineup to create. Now I'm going with the forwards right now because with the defense it's just one in or out player. So we'll deal with that at the back end. In terms of the forwards, if the Panthers just re-sign Bennett, which seems likely, and give Sam Miskevich a contract, which again pretty much seems likely, you're going to go into next year with Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Bennett, Tkachuk, Sam Miskevich, Lundell, Luostarinen, Erod, and then Boqvist centering Greer and Gadjevich. Greer and Gadjevich already have contracts for next year. So does Boqvist. Now, Boqvist is probably not your optimal 4C, and some of these lineups will involve the need to maybe go get somebody at the trade deadline. There's a lot of moving parts here. So that's the lineup if we do the bare minimum. Just sign Bennett, sign Sam Miskevich. We've got our 12 guys for the most part, unless we want to try to go upgrade at 4C, but we'll get into the money that involves here in a minute. Now, the next possible lineup, this is a little bit different in terms of if we don't want to just plug Boqvist in there at 4C and considering our AHL players, same top six, okay? But then you might have Sordiff on that third line next to Lundell and Luostarinen. You might have a situation where, like Sam Miskevich this year, where he played for the majority of the year and then came out in the playoffs. You might have a situation with Sordiff that way next year in the third line, obviously if we don't have Marchand, and then you would have Erod centering Greer and Gadjevich on that fourth line and Boqvist as your extra. That lineup, again, you want to continue to try to get younger, but at the same point, Brad Marchand is basically playing at a Conn Smythe level, so, you're going to want to take a look at the numbers and see if you can possibly get him to sign. But if you can't, again, this is another way. We have the money for this, no problem. And Sordiff was kind of ready this year, but you're not going to have two rookies on a team that's expected to win a cup again. So my assumption would be he's obviously going to get a chance to make the team next year. But if we sign Marchand, he's going to kind of be blocked-ish. And we'll get into that with this next one. So now this is the lineup that would be likely if we did find a way to sign Marchand. Again, the top six for me is locked in. You're going to sign Bennett. You're going to sign Sam Miskevich. To me, that's locked in because you're not moving Lundell and Luostarinen. You're not separating those two. That's the pair. So you're going to have Sam Miskevich in that top six. Now, if you had Marchand on that third line, then you can just do a couple of other things. Okay, you could have Boqvist centering Greer and Gadjevich because you're likely going to have to trade Erod to make that the Marchand signing. And then I have Sordiff as an extra here. What I mean by that is I know that you're not going to want him up and sitting, right? If you're going to want him to play. So we may end up in a situation, again, this is if we sign Marchand, and we'll look at the money, but we may end up in a situation where you've got Sordiff coming up, and if we need, because, of an injured player, right? But then when everybody's healthy, you'd have Sordiff back at the AHL level playing as well. That's a possibility, because you are going to block Sordiff if you sign Marchand, because you're not going to put him out there. We already have Greer, Gadjevich, Boqvist signed for next year. So even if you move Erod, I don't think that you would have Sordiff playing 4 or 5 minutes on a consistent basis I think you'd have him in the AHL, and then if we need him because a guy gets hurt, then you'd move him up. Now, let's get into the money. Now, the simplest way to look at this, again, doing the bare minimum, okay? We got $19 million in cap space. You give Bennett 8, it leaves 11. If you can get Ekblad for 6, that leaves 5. You got to get a backup goalie for $1 million. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now you've got 4. You're going to give Samoskevich 2, most likely. That leaves you $2 million. That gives you 1 extra forward and 1 extra defenseman. So that's possible, of course, but Ekblad has to take 6, which, you know, when we look a little bit later at the free agent right-handed defenseman, Ekblad can take 6, but it's going to be a massive discount probably over what he would get elsewhere. So that's going to be entirely up to him. But that's the way we can make it work. If you're giving Bennett 8, you can give Ekblad 6 and fill out the rest of the roster, but that's it. We're tapped out. We're tapped out. Now, what's the next thing I have here? Okay, so this is how, this is if we could get Marchand, or how we can get Marchand. You got the $19 million. After Bennett, you got 11. Now, if you can get Ekblad to take 5, you get into wishful thinking territory here, but, you know, if we win the cup tomorrow, or Tuesday, if we win the cup on Tuesday, maybe Ekblad wants to stay for a little bit cheaper for a chance of a 3-peat. Wouldn't, you know, stranger things have happened. So Bennett 8, Ekblad 5. Now you still got 6. Now if you move Erod, you got 9. Okay, you give him Samoskevich 2, you got 7. The backup goalie leaves 6. And now if you can get Marchand to stay for 4, you've got the $2 million that you still need to fill out the rest of the roster with the extra forward and the extra defenseman. Now, that's probably the biggest wishful thinking lineup we could have, but it is somewhat possible. Bennett's going to get his 8. Okay, that's got to be pretty much a done deal. Could Ekblad get more than 5? Yes. Can Marchand get more than 4? Yes. But that's the only way the numbers are going to work, and you have to move Erod to do it. Okay, that's the only way that's going to happen if you're paying Ekblad. Now, if Ekblad's going to leave, if Ekblad leaves, you got 11 after Bennett, you got 10 after the backup goalie, you've got 8 after Samoskevich, and now you've got your 2 extra players at $1 million apiece-ish, right? Minimum wage to $1 million. It leaves you 6, but you've got to replace Ekblad and sign Marchand. So again, you're probably looking at a situation where you'd have to hope Marchand would take 4 and try to find a defenseman to replace Ekblad for 2. That's probably pushing it. Now, we know Bill Zito can go find guys, right? I mean, Mikla is not making a whole ton of money. But in terms of being on a team immediately slotted into the second pair that you're expecting to win a cup, or at least compete for a cup, remember, Kulikov and Balinskis are signed. So if you leave, if Ekblad leaves, you got Jones and Forsling, and you're fine, but you've got to get Mikla a pair. Now, technically, could you start the season with Mikla Kulikov and then have Balinskis and maybe a lesser player on the third pair? Yeah, but now you're really starting to tread water. You know you're going to have to make some kind of move with the trade deadline at that point, because you're not going in to the Stanley Cup Finals with Mikla Kulikov as your second pair if you got Balinskis and who knows who in the third pair. So you don't want to push things too much. I don't think there's really much of a way to get Marchand without moving Erod, even if Ekblad leaves, because you're going to have to replace Ekblad. And we'll talk about that a little bit here as we move forward. Now, first things first here. These are the backup goalies. I'm going to need my glasses, so bear with me. Are these the backup goalies? I can't read them anymore. Yeah. So I put out a list here. It's a short list. These were basically the most viable backup goalies in our price range of $1 million or less. And I'm not going to go over the whole list here because there's one name there we've been talking about on the stream a lot. It seems like he would be the obvious fit, and that's Alex Lyon. He's a free agent. He's not signed. I can't imagine he's going to, he was already making only $900,000. I'm sure he'd take that to come back. And we already know Lyons, he's suitable backup. We'll give Bob some rest. And we're in that position now where if something happens to Bob, okay. Now we do have Kakkonen that we traded Drieger for. He's playing well in the AHL. Could he be our backup next year? Yeah, could be. We could not even have to move outside of the organization. My assumption is that they saw Drieger, they felt, they got Kakkonen in and said, well, maybe, we want to take a look at him, right? To see if maybe he's going to be the backup for next year. Checkers are in the finals, so he must be doing pretty well. So it may just be that he's going to slot up next year, and then you give Cooper Black the job that he should have as the starting AHL goalie and move forward from there. Either way, you're going to be paying $1 million. You know what I mean? Give or take. That's what you're going to end up paying. Now, I want to get into the defense a little bit. So I went, if Ekblad leaves, I went over the free agents that are going to be right-handed defensemen coming up this year. I'm not going to get too much into depth here with that. I'll have separate videos over the course of the next couple of weeks where we get into more details. But one name that struck my fancy, if Ekblad leaves, is Henry Yokihiro. I believe I remember him from the Four Nations, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Boston did just trade to get him. I think they gave up a 4th-round pick to Buffalo. But 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's only 25. He's a right-hand shot. I think he was making something about $3 million. So could that be an Ekblad replacement? Could you get him in at the same price tag, 3, maybe 4? Now, that might be a bit of a stretch. Boston probably intends to sign the guy. He traded right for him right there at the trade deadline. You would assume they're going to sign him. But as of now, he's still going to be a UFA, so maybe they didn't like what they saw. I don't know much about him. That was just the name that stuck out to me because I was looking at right-handed defensemen with some size that might be able to fit in with the salary needs that we're going to have. I don't think we're going to go too low. And he has had significant playing time, more so than a youngster. Now, we've talked about Panthers defense or lack thereof defensive prospects in the AHL. Now, interestingly enough, we just talked about that today, and somebody posted to the Flying Fluffy Sports Facebook group, and apparently Bennett, our defenseman down there in the AHL, just won Game 2 of their finals in overtime. That's good for the kid. Glad to hear it. But I think he's 5'9", $180, so I'm not really sure he's going to have the size that we're going to need. But then I found this kid, and we've talked about him before, I believe, on the noon stream, but I'd forgotten he was around, and I just blew my holes. Here we go. Let's get back to it. Where were we? Is this what I'm looking for? Yeah, here we go. Mikolas Horvolka. Horvolka? Yeah, Horvolka. 6'6", 229. He's a right-handed shot. He's only 23. He's undrafted. He played for the Checkers this year, had 60 games, 3 goals, 7 assists. It was a +2, only 33 penalty minutes. Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to plop him next to Mikkola, right? He hasn't had any NHL time at all. So I'm not saying that he's going to be Ekblad's replacement this year, but 6'6", 229, okay? You follow what I'm saying? That's somebody worth developing, and it seems like that's what we're trying to do. He may be somebody that starts to get a little bit of time, in the lineup over the next few years. Now, I know we had Magna this year. He looked solid a couple of times he came up. He's 32. He's not a kid. So I think that development time, we need to go to this guy, Horvolka. I know we've got Alsher that we drafted as well, but he's a lefty. So I was looking at the right-handed shots that could possibly replace Ekblad. So we've got a little bit of play there, but obviously the Ekblad replacement is Jones. So when I say replace Ekblad, I'm really saying replace Jones. Mikkola is going to need a partner. he's got to be getting frustrated because he's had about a dozen different partners for the 5 minutes he's been here. So if I had to guess what's going to happen, we're going to re-sign Bennett, the 8x8. That seems to be the number that's pretty much out there. Now, we've heard the rumors, innuendo, that Ekblad's going to check the free agent market. If he does that, I mean, somebody's going to give him $8, $9 million. I mean, Chychrun just got paid. I can't imagine Ekblad wouldn't find suitors out there that were willing to give him at least $8 or $9 million. He's not going to get that with us. Could we get him for $6? Yes. Okay? That's the bare bones. We can pay Bennett $8. We can play Ekblad $6. Say goodbye to Marchand. But then the team is set. If we do that, the team is set. Because you've got your 6 defensemen. You've got your forwards. And the only thing that you're looking to do is get a backup goalie, which might just be Cochran moving up. And then you're going to get a guy for, an extra forward for the 4th line, or you could just use Sordiff in that role, or you're going to still need a 7th defenseman, but you've got your 6 signed if you sign Ekblad. So we stand the chance of having very little to do at the deadline, or during free agency, I should say. It's very possible that we won't do much at all because Bennett, Samoskevich, you're done. You're done for your forward group because whether you want to bring Sordiff up or not, or put Erod next to Lundell or Luosterainen, you've already got Boquist signed, so that's like your Swiss Army knife wherever you need to plug a hole in during the year if somebody gets injured. And there's only so long you want to leave Sordiff down there in the AHL. You're going to want him to start getting some games in. Greer signed, Gadjevich is signed. You're pretty much set unless you really wanted to go upgrade at 4C. But I mean, if you got Rodriguez, why would you go hunting and pecking that way? So I kind of feel like if we get Bennett, Samoskevich signed, which I think it's close to a done deal as possible, because the one thing about Samoskevich is he's not offer sheet eligible. He's offer sheet ineligible because he's only played to one NHL season. Somebody came to the stream this week and let us know about that. So he's gonna get a contract. He's gonna get some money from us. I'm saying maybe 2. Could it be $1.75? Could it be $1.50? Save us $500,000 to make things a little bit easier on us? Maybe that can happen. This stands to reason. He's got a little bit more of a chance of him taking $1.50 or a little bit less than 2 because he hasn't been involved in the playoff run except for the first few games that he got in. So there might be $500,000 here or there, $250,000 here or there that we could save, and that might be important. That might be important because remember it was not but a couple of years ago that we were like $250,000 short to be able to have an extra player. And then we'd have to call guys up from the AHL. We had to go 11-7 a couple of times. And that could happen again. Now, like I said, Balinskis is signed. Kulikov is signed. So you're going to assume Schmidt's going to go get a paycheck somewhere else. And the only other spot that you're going to need to fill is next to Mikula should Ekblad leave. Otherwise, that's done. Now, in terms of the goaltending, not everybody is aware, but when we traded Spencer Knight, they asked Paul Maurice about, hey, we just traded the future goaltender, and Paul Maurice was very clear that the future goaltender for the Florida Panthers is Sergei Bobrovsky. It's my assumption, I would assume, that we're going to see a Bobrovsky extension this summer, because I don't think they're going to want to go into next year with all the questions of, it's Bob's last year, is he going to retire, are we going to extend him? I have a feeling they're just going to go ahead and give him 2 more years. What the price tag will be, I don't know. I don't know, especially if we win the second cup. I don't know how you go to Bob and say, take a pay cut, right? So I don't know about that. Or we could go and say, hey, take a pay cut, and Bob would be happy to take $6 or even $7 million to give us a little bit more flexibility in the following years, because next year is his last contract year. So overall, the chances of signing Marchand, even if you lose Ekblad, even if you lose Ekblad, you could sign Marchand then for sure, but you're going to have to be playing it really cheap on defense. Mainly, the only way that you're gonna sign all three is if Ekblad takes 5, which if he tests free agency, it's going to be a hard ask. You know what I mean? He might take $1 million or 2 less, but if you start talking about $3-4 million a year less, that might add up. So the Marchand thing obviously is a pipe dream. We'd love to have him, right? But then there's the part about Rodriguez. Now Rodriguez has been here for the 2. Assuming we win the cup, assuming we would win the cup here in this series, Rodriguez would have been here for both runs. So you really want to trade a guy who would be part of the three-peat for all 3 years? That's tough. The other part to that is you watch these games, and would Florida be winning this cup without Marchand? Probably not. Probably not. I would say to go ahead and, for me, I would be willing to trade Rodriguez to sign Marchand just because of what it would mean for the development for Lundell and Luosterainen. We've seen just in these 20-whatever games that they've been playing together in the playoffs, the explosion, especially for Luosterainen. So I'd love to see it. If Ekblad leaves, it's a lot easier to do it, but then we've got a big hole on defense and somewhat of a hole in the locker room, but if Ekblad leaves and you sign Marchand, you're kind of hedging that hole in the locker room. Kind of makes things a little bit of a shift there, but I feel like we still have enough veteran leadership to try to get the three-peat. But then you'd really be putting yourself in the bind in terms of defensively because, Jones, Forsling, that's fine. Your bottom pair with Kulikov and Belinskas is fine, but you got to get a pair for Mikkola, and then are you really going to go into the finals next year, the playoffs next year with Belinskas on your bottom pair? So that might still be another spot we'd have to fix during the trade deadline. Now, the last thing I'll say is I've kind of had myself some conjecture and not so serious discussion about the possibility of Tkachuk needing off-season surgery and just shutting him down for a whole year so he can recover and using his LTIR money and then him coming back for the playoffs. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he was going to need surgery. I would be surprised if they did the whole LTIR thing and kept him out for the whole year. Although, if completely fresh, rested, healthy, pissed off Tkachuk from sitting the whole year to start the playoffs next season, I wouldn't totally be against that either. So, bottom line, when I think about it, is if I had my wish list here, you're talking about signing Bennett, you're talking about re-signing Ekblad for cheap, trade Rodriguez, sign Marchand. That would be what I would want more than anything else. I hate to say trade Rodriguez, but at the same point, if you're trading Rodriguez for Marchand, it's tough to say no. It really, really would be tough to say no. So, all right, that's the breakdown. I hope you guys found this helpful. I know everybody's been talking about it a lot. And past that, I'll see you guys. This is going to be out early in the morning, so you guys get a chance to watch this before the noon stream. If I got anything wrong or if I need any corrections, go ahead and let me know. You know how this is. I'm old. My brain works most of the time, but not all the time. All right. Appreciate all the support. We'll see you again soon.